Hey everybody, this is Minion Soldier and this is Armored Warfare. Now, this tank here is the WZ-1224. Now, the WZ-1224 is a premium tank that costs 1,500 gold, which you can actually buy on the Armored Warfare website or through the my.com website. And basically, 1,500 gold costs you 699. It's what costs you for this Tier 5 premium tank, which is actually I would say fairly cheap for this tank, and I'm going to be showing you in the battles coming up just how good it is. Now, one of the great things about this tank is that if you're a PvE player like myself, in order to unlock the Chinese line, you have to do 600,000 damage within, I believe it's 50 meters of a nearby ally to unlock the Chinese line, or if you buy this tank, which is 699, you unlock the Chinese line immediately. Now, so far the Chinese line doesn't go beyond tier 8, but obviously they're going to be filling in other tanks in that area as soon as they, I guess, finish development on them. And I mean, there obviously is some real life Chinese tanks up to tier 10 that are easily candidates for a tank of, or a tank along the Chinese line. Anyways, um, overall, what can I say about this tank? Armor, very solid from the front. It shoots at a fairly rapid rate. I think it's about a 7-second reload with my skills, and of course, my crew is just barely at tier or level 2 skills on this. So I haven't really played it a lot, but for the battles that I have played in it, it has been an extremely solid performer, and it is not unusual to tip over 10,000 damage with this tank. And one of the rounds that I'm going to show you is, I would say, honestly, one of my lowest performing rounds in this tank. Since I've gotten it. And so I think that that should give you a fair picture of what this tank is capable of. I'm also going to be firing nothing but APCR, so if you wanted to add heat rounds to the mix, you could see just how far you could take this tank. Anyways, enough of that. Let's take this thing into battle and see how we do.
I'm glad you're here, Black Company.
Now,
Our
overall, the
top
tank
forces are
itself, at
after
least in
Operation
appearance, is
Missile.
very clearly
We'll call out their position from the base.
a mix
We'll get
between
them.
Western and Soviet bloc style design. And that's something that is a hallmark of a lot of the Chinese designs, even going all the way to the Tier 8. I mean, if you look at the Tier 8 tank in this line, if you go to the preview option and look at it,
Those
I mean,
bastards,
you're
they're
basically
stealing
seeing
our
a Western
ordnance.
tank turret
Don't let
on
those
top
helicopters
of
take
what
off.
looks like a T-72. And it's sort of that marriage of technologies which makes the Chinese tank line pretty unique. Now, the Chinese tank line also unlocks the retrofit reinforced tank treads, which basically, or reinforced wheels, which basically reduces the chance that you'll be tracked when driving a vehicle once you have those equipped on your tank. But for this battle here, I am using the retrofits of improved propellant. Level 3, I am using... Oh man.
Identify target.
What am I using on this tank? Improved propellant, improved breach, and chrome barrel to increase my reload rate. I mean, you can see here I have it down to about 7 seconds. And what I'm doing is basically just using this tank to win by sheer weight of fire. And so even though I'm only firing AP rounds, it's because of that rapid reload that I'm able to just keep getting rounds downrange very, very quickly. And the solid front armor of this tank allows it to take hits from the front, so it's very difficult to get into a position where you're overwhelmed. I mean, because you're just able to, even though I'm not hitting as hard and I'm using the least damaging ammo, I'm able to just continuously fire shells, and I don't have to look for my shots as much as I would have to if I was firing, say, heat ammo, which can be very much dependent on the angle of impact and whether or not there's anything in the way. Whereas with AP ammo, those shells don't do as much damage, but they have a better chance to just carry through whatever they're hitting and go basically through the tank or into the tank and damage what's inside. And so that's generally why I tend to prefer AP ammo, is it's a lot less sensitive. So generally, if you aim well, unlike that shot there, your shot should go in. And it's a lot. I just find that With AP ammo, you're able to maintain a higher frequency of fire because you're not as dependent on your position and on the position of the enemy tank. So you're basically just able to keep that gun singing, and as soon as there's a shell in the breach, you're ready to rock and roll. So that's generally why I prefer AP ammo. Also because, I mean, obviously going into a PvP match, you know, being able to penetrate is crucial, and you know, if you're sitting there and you're having shells that are bouncing, it doesn't matter how much damage they do if they don't actually go through. And human beings are a lot less predictable than you know, NPC opponents. So I generally prefer to use AP ammo. Now I'm having to kind of go around here. I had to deal with these guys, and now I'm having to go up and deal with these secondary objectives because my team is, of course, kind of rushed ahead and forgotten about these things. So even though I'm kind of losing time and losing damage at this point, while I'm having to go around and deal with these secondary objectives, as you're going to see at the end plates, this tank is, you know, basically can do this. It can just give away damage because it's still going to dominate this match.
Well done.
And that's a
Now
pretty
go
solid
with us to
indicator
the
of how this tank performs. Decent mobility, you know, decent overall maneuverability of the hull. It turns very quickly, its turret turns very quickly. Now the only downsides are that it is a very Soviet-ish gun in that the accuracy, especially when you move the turret, can be very irksome. It can be very difficult to deal with, and so you're probably going to want to take secondary crew skills that influence that. But also the other downside is the fact that this gun only has 3 degrees of gun depression, which will require a few creative positions for your tank hull in order to bring that 3 degrees of gun depression to bear. Now, if the enemies in front of you are all at your level or above you, then you're fine. But if they're below you on, say, a match like Anvil, then it can become a bit of a pain in the ass to bring the gun on this tank to bear. And overall, you know, even with that taken into account, I still very much enjoy this tank. Now, for $6.99, do I feel that I got my money's worth? Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Well, I mean, on the one hand, not having to do 600,000 damage to unlock the Chinese tank line, yeah, I'd consider that worthwhile. And then add on to that the fact that, well, you're going to see how this tank performs. For a Tier 5 Premium, this thing dishes out a crap ton of damage, and it's actually got fairly reliable armor as well. I mean, it just... it's a killer. It really is just a little killer. And unlike the comparable T-72 that you could get at this tier, which was in the Ice Edition packs, and I believe there was one in the Merc packs as well, that Ice tank, the T-72, this tank actually has much more solid armor, I find, than the Ice tank, and it fires faster. I enjoy it a lot better than I enjoy the premium Russian T-72. And as you can see, I mean, it just, with the retrofits that I have on, it's easily able to just keep dishing out damage, and even though it's not hitting for as much, and it does have unfortunate bounces at the most inconvenient times, it still does the job. And I mean, this is of course the lowest performing round that I've had in this tank thus far, and still easily out damaging my team. And I mean, if that gives you any idea of the kind of tank this is, and for $6.99, I mean, that's kind of like a trip to McDonald's, right? So, I mean, you could do yourself a bit of a favor on 2 counts, both health-wise and fun-wise, and save the trip to McDonald's and just get this tank instead. And, you know, this is obviously something that you'll probably have a lot more fun with than a Happy Meal. But yeah, I mean, for $6.99, you just can't go wrong. And this thing, I would say that this tank overall as a premium is better than the, what is it, the MBT-70, easily. Better than the T-72 Ice Edition. And yeah, it's only $6.99. And and it unlocks the Chinese line for you right away without having to do the 600,000 damage within, what is it, 50 meters or 150 meters of an ally. I mean, this just allows you to go right down the Chinese tank line immediately, and so overall, yeah, I very much enjoy this tank. Would I buy it again? Yeah, easily. And I mean, you can see, I mean, even though its alpha isn't that high, you know, with the retrofits that I've got on, I've got that, you know, I've got that rate of fire just absolutely singing. And this crew isn't even fully spec'd out yet, and I mean, this thing just destroys. It just cuts right through things. And I've even been up tiered with this thing and had to fight like Abrams and, you know, T90 and stuff like that. Still, this thing just works right through them. And it even does bounce them from the front off of that upper plate. It really, really does. It's a very good tank. Easily worth the $6.99. Now, of course, the earnings on it are more in line with a Tier 5 premium and not, you know, a high-end premium vehicle as we're hoping to get in the higher tiers later on down the line. But I'm going to be exploring that a little bit later. Once the Tier 10 tanks are released, I plan to take my Tier 10 British tank, which will be the, what is it, the Challenger 2 LEP, or I believe that's LEP stands for Life Extension Project, which is the final version of the Challenger, because that's going to be basically the first Tier 10 that I get. And I'm going to look to see how that tank performs as battle hardened, which is, you know, when you spend a little gold and you turn it into a, like the sort of almost a premium tank, like a premium tank light. And you can earn credits, like 25% bonus credits and 25 bonus rep per battle with that tank. I'm going to see how the earnings are in that and see if it's worth it to not just wait until you get a Tier 10 and then turn one of those into a premium tank and see what the earnings are like on that, especially with the new earnings formula, which frankly is good. It's a nice improvement, but not quite there, I think, yet. I still think there's just a little bit more to go. But overall, let's look at the end plates now after we've talked about earnings, and let's see how we did. And remember, this is only a Tier 5 premium in a Tier 5 medium game. So let's hop on up and see what we did. So overall, Destroyer medal, only 2,900 experience, but 112,000 credits. Now, even after the logistics fee, I'm still going to come up to about, I believe, 103,000 credits in the end with this tank. And like I said, this was one of my lowest performing rounds, and I easily dominated my team in damage with this tank. So overall, $6.99. I don't think you can go wrong buying this tank. And the fact that it automatically unlocks the Chinese line for you, I think it's just a win-win situation. Anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and thanks for watching.